to another episode of Silly, Sexy, and Sadistic History. I hope you're ready to get weird with history, because holy fucking shit. Witches. What is a witch? Why did everyone want to kill them in the Middle Ages? What is fucking demons like? How do you hide a man's penis from himself? How does one man initiate a multi-century genocide of women? And most importantly, how and why do you cook a human child? So to answer the first question, what is a witch? Well, it depends on what time period you're looking at. I mean, there's people who identify as witches today. Obviously, they are not the demon fucking human child cooking kind. So we're going to be looking at the medieval witches who supposedly were like this. And basically, to summarize the medieval conception of a witch, women are sluts, and all those sluts are magic, and all those magic sluts want to steal your penis, fuck your husband, or kill your cow. But this was also not always the case, so how the fuck did we end up here? Just with witches being so terrible, evil things that need to be burned at the stake and die. Well, sorry not sorry to any of my religious listeners out there, but pretty much it was the Catholic Church's fault. And also this one terrible dude named Heinrich Kramer. So in ancient times, like ancient Greece and Rome, magic was not good or evil. Magic was procured by calling upon daemons, so D-A-E-M-O-N-S, instead of like demons. And daemons could be good or evil. They were just magical spirits. So they could be used to do good magic or bad magic, and magic was a crime if it was bad, and used to hurt people or damage property or whatever. But magic could also just be good, as, healing or helping find lost things. So magic was neutral, and people could use it for good or bad in ancient times. And so that's how things were for, a couple thousand years. And then things started to change a little bit when Christianity took over as kind of like the head religion of the Roman Empire in around 300 CE, so about 1700 years ago. And once this happened, ideas of magic had to change to fit within like the Christian worldview. So there wasn't good and bad demons, and there certainly wasn't just like random helpful supernatural spirits. So then it changed to be that all magic was coming from something that was inherently evil, so an entity controlled by the devil himself. But still, the people using these demons to gain power weren't seen as all-out evil. The demon, or the devil, was really seen as the bad guy, not the sorcerer using them. So punishment during this time for magic wasn't that severe, as the sorcerers were either in command of the demons they summoned, or were victims of diabolical deceit, neither of which were horrible crimes, so they were mostly just punished with correction or penance. Even the clergy would sometimes use magic to summon ghosts from purgatory, or try to figure out who stole something and where it was. And this was probably just an excuse to be able to give out information that had been provided in confidence in confessional, which is hilarious. Like, the church dudes were like, hey, man, someone told me some fucked up shit in confession, but I'm bound by this priest penitent thing, so I can't just go spouting off about what a horrible person they are. I know. I'll pretend to use some necromantic magic to summon a spirit to accuse them of the terrible thing they did. What a fucking loophole. And this kind of perception of magic as coming from evil, but not necessarily making the person doing it evil, was basically how magic was understood for most of the medieval time period. And then things started changing a little bit in the 13th century because of the rediscovery in Europe of ancient Arabic, Jewish, and Greek books on magic. And then once these books were kind of rediscovered in Europe, scholars started studying them and occasionally applying their practices. And if you think in medieval times, pretty much all knowledge was controlled by the church. Church had all the books, church had all the people that could read, church pretty much controlled the social discourse, to say the least. So these scholars that were studying these texts were most likely also very closely related to the church, either clergymen themselves or in some way connected to the church. So with this increase in knowledge and study, people did start getting a little more nervous about the consequences of interacting with demons. But this kind of magic pretty obviously isn't like creepy old woman down the lane or like sexy young woman trying to seduce your husband type of witchcraft, right? It's like educated, learned men reading books and using fancy tools and spells to summon and control demons. Which seems pretty obviously like two very different types of things, like the poor old lady down the street giving you the evil eye versus some guy reading out of an ancient book summoning ghosts and shit. But the medieval church could really only understand magic from within their own worldview, which was power derived from communing with demons. So all magic was kind of defined as the same, even though it was pretty obviously not the same. So someone needed to come up with a comprehensive definition of magic that combined the learned elite magic that people who could read books and shit were doing with, like, the magic regular people would do. And that definition had to somehow answer the question, if elite, smarty men needed all this learning and expensive toys and books and shit to do magic, how the fuck were common women able to do even stronger magic without these tools and knowledge? Well, the man that set out to really answer this question in all its specificities was Heinrich Kramer at the end of the 1400s. Heinrich Kramer was a lifetime theologian studying the grand concepts of Christianity and spirituality. He was German, but his work took him all over the surrounding area and even all the way to Rome for a while. He also was a pretty fanatic witch hunter and just general hunter of heretics. He just really hated people who didn't love Jesus the way that he loved Jesus. And he was also just pretty fucking terrible. So I got a quote here. He was a man capable of inspiring profound animosity in those he met. This one time he talked shit about the Holy Roman Emperor and was almost thrown in jail, but the church intervened on his behalf because the Catholic Church also hates when people don't love Jesus the way that they love Jesus. But he also embezzled a whole bunch of money from the church, which he supposedly loved so much, and almost went to jail for that also, but the Pope intervened on his behalf because, again, Pope also really hates people that don't love Jesus the right way. Side note, medieval Catholic Church, absolutely insane. I have no problem throwing all sorts of shit at them. That doesn't mean I think that those things that I'm saying apply to the modern Catholic Church. Anyway, back to Heinrich Kramer, who, while out on his witch hunts, started to get really annoyed with local authorities telling him he couldn't harass, assault, and murder their people, because not everybody thought there was witchcraft just everywhere, like this guy did. So, in 1484, Kramer went to the Pope and got the Witch Bull, which basically confirmed the widespread existence of witches and gave inquisitors, so those people charged with hunting down and eradicating the witch problem, the authority to do whatever the fuck they wanted to get rid of the witch blight, and anyone who stopped them could be, and I quote, excommunicated or worse. Even with the power that the Witch Bull granted Kramer, not everybody still agreed with his definition of witches. One bishop thought he asked some wildly inappropriate questions, accused without evidence, and begged him to stop molesting the citizens of his town and to return to his convent, lest the husbands and friends of the women who he had prosecuted lay hands on him and do him injury. Now, what was mostly upsetting these people is that Kramer believed that witchcraft was inherently tied to sexuality. So going back to that idea of giving yourself to the devil, body and soul, well, that's just not like using your body to do what he tells you to do. No, it means fucking. You gotta fuck the devil. So because witchcraft and sexuality were so linked in Kramer's mind, he spent a lot of time talking to women about their sexual histories. And go figure, in medieval Europe, people didn't think that was super appropriate. So there was definitely not consensus about what a witch was, what she did, and what to do with her. One case in which this lack of consensus is very obvious is that of Helena Schubern, who Kramer accused of witchcraft. And he was super focused on her sexuality, saying it is a general rule that all witches have been slaves from a young age to carnal lust and to various adulteries. And throughout his interrogation of her, he just super stayed focused on her sexuality. Not like, who have you cursed and what have you done to them? He was like, no. When did you lose your virginity? How many people have you had sex with? Did you fuck that lady's husband? Did you fuck that lady's husband? Did you fuck that guy? And the local court authorities were super not into it. They were like, dude, you can't talk about this in public. You shut the fuck up. And they forced the trial to be dismissed because of his inappropriate conduct. And Kramer was so pissed that this slutty witch woman got away that he decided to write a book defining witchcraft from his perspective that's so focused on female sexuality. And this book was the Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of the Witches, which was basically the how-to guide for the witch craze. So you're thinking Middle Ages, women getting burned at the stake, dunked in water, pressed on rocks, whatever. This is the book that told you who to do that to and how to do it. Kramer wasn't the only guy working on this book. There was also Jacob Sprenger, who appeared to do a lot less of the actual writing and research than Heinrich, but he was much more academically distinguished, and everyone didn't find him repulsively irritating. So Kramer probably chose him as a partner to kind of add to his own authority. Alright, I just had a lovely lunch break, and now I'm sitting back down to get into the nitty-gritty of the Malleus Maleficarum and what it says about witches. According to a modern book about the medieval one, the goal of the Malleus was to demonstrate the existence and prevalence of witchcraft and the terrible threat it possesses. Secondly, it provides sufferers from witchcraft with a broad range of remedies, both legal and spiritual. Finally, the text is a guide for civil and ecclesiastical authorities to the successful detection and prosecution of witches. In addition, the Malleus Maleficarum would take the witch constructed by learned theologians, the witch of traditional legend, folklore, and rumor, and the old woman huddled before the inquisitor's bench, and blend them into a single being. This all-encompassing definition of a witch required witches to do 4 things to get their power: deny the Catholic Church, devote themselves body and soul to the devil, give the devil unbaptized babies, and persist in diabolical filthiness through carnal acts with incubuses and succubus demons. So yeah, basically middle finger to God, promise to love the devil forever, sacrificing babies, and fucking demons. That's how you become a witch. But why would one choose to do these terrible things? Well, according to Kramer, all witchcraft comes from carnal lust, which in women is insatiable. Basically, women became witches because they just wanted to get fucked. And this resulted in a pretty easy way to just really criminalize and punish female sexuality, because anytime a woman was lustful or was suspected of engaging in some sort of sexual sin, adultery or having sex before marriage or masturbation or whatever, it was just automatically linked to, well, she's probably a witch. Obviously she can't control her sexuality, so she must be fucking demons. Witches were also expected to be ugly inside and out. Got another fun quote here. Adulterers inflamed with passion for the foulest of women have set aside their most beautiful wives. So if your husband's fucking someone else and you think you're prettier than her, she's probably a witch. In addition, witches whose consorts, so men that they had fooled into being their sexual partners, weren't giving it enough of that good, got their penises taken away. Get the logic? Well, if you're not using it right with me, you don't deserve it at all. So they just jack their penises. It seems like usually the men got them back eventually, though. This might have also just been a metaphor for erectile dysfunction. Also, though, there was this hilarious story I read that was like, this guy knew that this old lady had probably taken his penis. He was like, I'm gonna go track her down and just ask her for it back. So he found her. He was like, hey, can I have my penis back? And she was like, yeah, just go grab it out of the penis nest. And it was like a bird's nest full of wiggling, live animated penises. And this kid's like, hey, that's a nice one. I think I'm just going to take that one. And the witch is like, what are you doing? That's not your penis. That's the priest's penis. And so he didn't get his penis back because he got envious of the priest's penis, and apparently the priest had also fucked the witch, because that's how she would have got his penis. And medieval story time is so fun. Also, I am pretty sure I remember seeing an artistic rendering of this scene from the Middle Ages, and I will post that on my Instagram, because just a nest full of wiggly dicks. Everyone needs to see it. So medieval people thought witches used their power primarily for committing sexy sins, but witches also used their power for seeking revenge against their enemies or underpaid services, or to steal babies was really common and fuck with the whole reproductive system. And they were frequently accused of causing infertility, both in humans and in livestock. And they also were frequently accused of causing abortions and sneaking into people's houses and drinking baby blood. And now on to answering the question, how does one cook and consume a human child? Well, I have a passage here from the Malleus Maleficarum itself. With infants not yet baptized, or even baptized ones, especially if they are not protected by the sign of the cross and by prayers, through our ceremonies we kill in their cradles, or laying by their parents' sides, we secretly remove them from their graves. We boil them in a cauldron, until with the bones torn out, almost all the flesh is made into a liquid draught. From the more solid matter we made an unguent suitable for our desires and arts and transmutations. With more liquid fluid we fill up a flask or leather bottle, and he who drinks from this, with a few ceremonies added, immediately is made a master of our sect. So to summarize, witches would murder babies, steal them from their graves, boil them in cauldrons, drink part of their remains, and the other half they made an unguent with, and an unguent is a lubricant. So lubricant suitable for our desires and arts and transmutations. And in my mind, if witches are basically just known for wanting to have sex with everybody and anything, if you're making a lubricant suitable for your desires and arts, you probably just made lube out of dead babies. And I'm sorry that I had to share that with you. But seriously, how could I not? That's absolutely fucking insane. And, you don't get more sexual and sadistic in a really bad way, obviously, than that. Baby lube. What the fuck? Alright, so these crazy guys wrote this crazy book about some crazy shit. But to what consequence? Well, holy shit, a lot of dead people. Specifically, more and more dead women. Before 1350, a majority of accused sorcerers were men. By the end of that century, women made up 58% of those accused of sorcery. Early in the 15th century, women were 60 to 70% of those accused. Now, witchcraft is more specifically defined. And then at the end of the 15th century is when the Malleus Maleficarum was written in 1487. And after that, during the 16th and 17th centuries, around 80% of those tried and executed were women. And the men that were accused were pretty much always accused with a woman. This change in the proportion of women being accused of witchcraft kind of reflects that transition of the church viewing magic as something that smart guys with big books could do, and instead that being replaced with, no, you get magic power by having sex with the devil. And this concept is pretty well summarized in one of my sources. Elite magic was a clearly masculine act entailing intelligence and force of will. Witchcraft, on the other hand, while allowing even greater access to demonic power than most elite magicians commanded, was based on submission and subservience to Satan, characteristically feminine qualities. So basically, this new understanding of magic made magic inherently sexualized in a female way, because that subservience to the devil and submission of body and soul is, feminine characteristic. Not actual feminine characteristics, mind you, but in the medieval conception of what it was to be female, they certainly were. People in the Middle Ages believed women were weak and more susceptible to sin and more likely to go against God and easier to corrupt and dumber. So, the perfect being to fall victim to the seductions of the devil. But not everybody agreed with this interpretation of witchcraft right away. Like I was talking about how a lot of people had disagreed with Kramer and his methods, but he was the one who'd seemed to have done the most extensive research and thinking about the topic. So eventually, in combination with some economic and political changes, resulted in people generally accepting this definition of witchcraft as based on female sexuality. During the 16th century, so the 1500s, many countries started criminalizing and actually prosecuting some new offenses for things that, like, previously the church had taken care of. So politics had kind of taken over a little bit where the church had had power before. And the different European governments were starting to criminalize vagrancy, begging, blasphemy, sexual misconduct, infanticide, and witchcraft. And then some historians argue this was a criminalizing of women and giving the state more moral and social control over women, because most of these crimes were primarily committed by women, and infanticide and witchcraft were the only two crimes added that were punishable by death, and those are both very inherently female crimes. So basically, new definition of witchcraft that defines witchcraft as inherently female, plus a social environment that had led there to be more laws and social controls on women and their sexuality, created an environment where just lots and lots of women were executed. And by lots and lots, I mean some people estimate between 40 and 100,000. Other people estimate between 200,000 and 400,000 people killed during that witch craze period of 1350 to like 1750-ish. And 80% of those were women. That got kind of serious and depressing. Let's talk about some more crazy shit. I found this great passage in the Malleus Maleficarum that basically is just a huge list of all the things that witches could do to people. So, before the eyes of their parents, and when no one is in sight, throw into the water children walking by the waterside. They make horses go mad under their riders. They can transport themselves from place to place through thin air, either in the body or in imagination. They can affect judges and magistrates so they cannot hurt them. They can cause themselves and others to keep silence under torture. They can bring about a great trembling in the hands and horrors in the minds of those who would arrest them. They can show to others occult things and certain future events by the information of devils, though this may sometimes have a natural cause. They can see absent things as if they were present. They can turn the minds of men to inordinate love or hatred. They can at times strike whom they will with lightning, and even kill some men and animals. They can make of no effect the generative desires, and even the power of copulation, cause abortion, kill infants in their mothers' wombs, or by mere exterior touch. They can bewitch men and animals with a mere look, without touching them, and can cause death. They dedicate their own children to devils, and all of these things the most powerful of all classes of witches can do, but they cannot undo them. One way in which the church instigated the public's interest in finding witches was offering indulgences for anyone who turned in a witch. And for any of you not familiar with medieval Catholic bribery, an indulgence is a gift given by the Pope to someone who has done a good deed, or more usually paid a whole bunch of money to the church. And the purpose of an indulgence is basically, in the Catholic idea of death, everyone, even if you're going to go to heaven, before you go to heaven, goes to purgatory to pay for whatever sins they did commit while on earth. And it can be any amount of time you spend in purgatory, depending on how sinful your life was. And an indulgence was basically a chunk of time taken away from your purgatory sentence. So the church just basically bribed people by commuting their spiritual jail time for them to accuse people of witchcraft. I feel like I didn't quite do a sufficient job answering the question, how do you fuck a demon? So I'm going to go into a little more detail with that. And I just reread the Malleus Maleficarum passage on it, and it's long and complicated and makes very little sense. But I'm going to do my best to repeat it here to you. Basically, demons are smoke monsters. I don't know if any of my listeners have watched Supernatural, which is just one of the best shows ever. Check it out. But they're demons, basically, is what I'm picturing Heinrich Kramer imagined demons to be like. So, yeah, black, smoky, scary monsters. Generally. But when sex was involved, they could apparently condense their arid form so they could fuck a lady, basically, I guess. And then there's a secondary question of, can they make babies? And the answer seems to be, kinda? So what a demon would do, I think, again, it's a very complicated piece of text to read, but a demon would go fuck a dude as a woman. So, like, I'm a demon, I got a vagina, yeah. Gets fucked by a dude. Demon's like, ha 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 ha, now I have his jizz. And the demon is like, boom, now I'm a dude, I got a dick. And then he goes fucks a witch, a lady, and deposits that semen he had collected from the man he just fucked into the woman he was then fucking. So it was like, it was technically the man's child that the demon stole the jizz from, but demon's role in the whole situation kind of marked the child born of such a union as belonging to the devil. And yeah, that's how you fuck a demon, and what happens if he gets you pregnant. Alright, I'm basically just talking about random shit I found in my research now that I didn't figure out how to put into the actual structure of this episode. So anyway, this other guy named Johannes Nider was a writer about witchcraft before Kramer was, so he was like I think he was like a century earlier, and he was a real woman hater too. This is just a quote that I found that kind of conceptualizes what a lot of educated men at this time period thought about women. What else is a woman but an enemy of friendship, an unavoidable punishment, a necessary evil, a natural temptation, a desirable calamity, a domestic danger, a delightful disaster, evil in nature, but portrayed in the color of good? Therefore, if it is a sin to send her away, it is often a torment to stay with her. It is inevitable that we either cause adultery to occur by sending her away, or that we have daily battles by keeping her. This was basically Nider's argument about why educated men shouldn't marry women. In addition, Nider said, a wise man must not marry. First of all, this is because it will hinder his study of philosophy, and it is impossible for anyone to attend both to his book and his wife. And I'm gonna end it there, because I don't even know how to follow that up. Medieval bitches be trippin'. In summary, in ancient times, people who did magic weren't really considered evil. In early medieval times, probably a little bit evil, but no more than any other sin. And then, in later medieval times, the connection between women and witchcraft and fucking the devil was made, and witchcraft became like the most evil thing you could possibly do. And a shit ton of women and quite a few men were just killed about it, because female sexuality is terrifying. So thank you so much for listening. I want to do more witchcraft episodes. I have like 10 more articles that I found for this episode that I haven't even got to read yet because I ran out of time, and I would have been sitting here recording for 10 hours if I had put in all the information at once. So ask me questions. Let me know what you guys want to know about witchcraft. I could do like all sorts of different shit. I could look at voodoo from a not horribly racist perspective. Maybe like brujos in Latin American culture, or just like by country in Europe, witches were treated kind of differently, or at least there was like different folklore around them. But yeah, let me know what you want to know about witches, because I'll figure it out and I'll tell you about it, and then we can talk about it more and we can learn together and it'll be super fun. In the meantime, stay silly, sexy, and sadistic, but not the killing babies, making lube from their corpses kind of sexy sadistic. That's bad. Don't do that one.